A little over 8 years ago, I made a video, or as I should call it, a piece of art.
Man, they had to make a custom-made Ra's al Ghul from Batman, and here are the pieces you'll need. A green cape.
If there was a sign from a young age that I was going to be an auteur, this was that sign. Every decision I made was just so on point. The iMovie editing, the epic music choices, and the custom itself, which was truly the beginning of my epic LEGO customizing empire. And by empire, I mean constantly starting easy projects and then never finding the commitment to follow through on them. I recently caught a wee bit of nostalgia for this video, so I decided to recreate the custom that it revolved around. But I'll tell you, whatever LEGO looks serviceable in the dark, looks awful when you put a light up to it. I mean, you look at it and you have no idea if it's supposed to be Ra's al Ghul or a wizard pirate. And even if you look past the comic inaccuracy, aesthetically this thing does not hold any water. All the colors clash, including the purple gloves that I'd like to think were a reference to Batman's first appearance, but knowing me, it was probably just because I had no idea what I was doing. Now you might be saying, Max, why are you being so hard on yourself? I mean, this was way back in 2012, and oh my gosh, 2012 was so long ago. Shouldn't you give yourself the benefit of the doubt considering you were 8 years old and kind of an idiot? No, because there is a benefit to the passage of time. I don't have to be the same dumb little kid who didn't know the difference between a Mutt Williams hairpiece and a brown Skittle. No, I can be an artist who looks back on their past amateur mistakes and says, I can do better. I can improve. So, welcome to The Scoop, the show where I show you how to escape the existentialist terror that is your past by making a custom LEGO Ra's al Ghul. From Batman. Firstly, I needed to get my mans a new getup. I mean, the whole bootstrapped pirate look was just not working for me. So, in order to find a fresh fit, I had to do some research. And with research comes reading. So let's have a quick little refresher. Ra's al Ghul is a DC Comics character who just so happens to be a megalomaniacal immortal who calls himself the head of the demon and the leader of the League of Assassins. He strives to perfect humanity by ending most of it, and despite his clear genocidal plans, Batman kind of views him as a roadblock rather than an enemy. Which sounds weird for Bruce, but then you realize that he totally had a kid with Ra's daughter, and when you call your pseudo-father-in-law a bad guy, it makes Thanksgiving really awkward. There are a bunch of different variants of Ra's that I could draw inspiration from, but I decided to go with his look from Batman Arkham Knight. I think his garbs look really cool, and I love his pale, sickly look that makes you remember that this guy's been alive since the dawn of humanity. So, now that we have the design, let's get to work. In the LEGO customizing community, you can go down one of two roads. One of them is by making purist minifigures, which is when you take pieces from pre-existing sets and minifigures and you cleverly cobble them together without modifying those pieces. My best attempt at making one of those was less than stellar, so there wasn't really a lot of leg room I had when finishing this thing up. But there's a second option. So yeah, it's done. Don't look at the back of it. I didn't finish the back. 8 years later and I'm finally done, and it looks fine. It's pretty amateur. You can tell I haven't painted a Lego in a couple years, but I like it. It has some charm to it. And this is like the first time I've done Lego stuff or even done comic stuff in a long time, so it's just nice to get that back, you know? So I guess if there were a message to this video, it'd be channel your inner child or something, or do the opposite. I gotta be honest, I still kind of hate myself from elementary school. I was mean, I didn't get the world, I was just impolite to everyone, I thought I was the coolest guy, and I made videos like this.
Happy December 12, 2012. 12, 12, 12, it's a 12, 12, 12.
I was absolutely the most annoying kid on the block, which has haunted me ever since middle school, but I think this will finally give me closure. I'd say all the embarrassing things I did to myself back in the day are now mute forever. So that's also a message, I guess. Just evolve, grow from your past. I didn't really have a plan for this video. But, you know, just like, be you and be your child self, even when your child self was the worst. I'm Max Rhineer, you're watching The Scoop. Leopards can change their spots. That's a way better message! I gotta reshoot the whole thing.
The beat live, you know Lil Juke made it. Body yaddy 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 yaddy. Body yaddy 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 yaddy. Body crazy, curvy, wavy beat. Yeah, Lil waist. Body crazy, curvy, wavy beat. Lil waist. Body yaddy 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 yaddy.
Welcome to my show On the Leap, and since nowadays every show has to have a theme, my theme is that we're ranking movies in my room. This is Room Reviews with Conrad. This is actually the first part to a two-part video. I will be ranking all the Harry Potter films which I just watched recently for the first time. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get started. I have not read the books, so please don't get mad at me for not understanding these movies. Also, if you don't agree with my opinion, I really don't care. You're a Harry Potter nerd. First up, we got Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Now, you can't really get mad at this movie. I mean, it does an amazing job at setting up the world for the rest of these films, and it makes me want to step inside and go on an adventure alongside with these characters. This feeling only really shows up in the first two, which makes you kind of miss it later in the films when they get really dark. The first part of this movie focuses on Harry, who is an ordinary child that suddenly starts getting a bunch of letters in the mail, and his aunt and uncle are basically evil, and I find it hilarious the lengths they're willing to go through just to get away from these letters. I mean, they move out into the middle of the ocean, straight up lighthouse style.
You're fond of me, lobster.
By now, I hope you're familiar with the plot. I mean, this thing is older than I am. Speaking of which, the CGI is a little dated. I mean, you could definitely tell this is the early days of CGI, especially in scenes like the Quidditch match. Also, can we talk about how broken Quidditch is? I mean, catching the golden snitch basically wins you the entire game. That's like if in hockey there were two guys in the background trying to attempt a triple axel, and if one of them landed it, the team got 50 points and won the game automatically. The spot basically exists to give Harry a special moment, which he really doesn't need more of. This movie does a great job at setting up the world, although I feel like it should come into its own a little more. The climax was pretty weak, apart from the chess game. The rest felt uninteresting, and I wasn't very invested throughout that third act. The casting was all on point, which it had to be because all these actors, apart from Dumbledore, had to stick it out through all these 8 movies, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. Overall, I'd give this movie a good introduction out of 10. Something weird about the Harry Potter movies that always stood out to me is that they never have 2 great films in a row. And The Chamber of Secrets is no different. I mean, this is definitely tied for the worst Harry Potter movie. It's actually the longest Harry Potter movie, which adds to it feeling so bloated. It felt like a chore to get through this one, especially because of all the annoying characters they introduced, notably Moaning Myrtle and Dobby, who is basically the Jar Jar Binks of Harry Potter. I mean, all he does the entire movie is mess up Harry and be annoying. This movie is definitely more plot heavy than the first one, especially since they introduced the chamber so early in the script. But the plot is still convoluted and weird. I mean, why does Hagrid tell the kids to go into the Forbidden Forest when he knows the spiders are in there waiting for them? I mean, stuff like that should have been cut from the script. But it isn't all bad. This movie does bless us with one gem, and that is the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, Professor Lockhart. I mean, every line of his is a classic.
I didn't get rid of the band and banshee by smiling at them.
Do you live here?
Celebrity is as celebrity does. Remember that.
And very clearly the bones are not broken.
The climax is a bit better in this one, but most of it is kind of pointless. I feel like this whole movie is kind of pointless. You could cut it from the discography and not miss much. Although this does seem to be the most nostalgic Harry Potter movie for me, which I don't know is a good thing for the Harry Potter movies. Ultimately, I'd give this one Lockhart is the only reason to watch it out of 10.
Really?
Now, I would consider The Prisoner of Azkaban the most well-made Harry Potter movie out of the bunch. For this one, they bring in legendary director Alfonso Cuarón, who now has a whole crap ton of Oscars. With it, he brings this movie a more dark and cinematic tone. This movie implements plenty more advanced filmmaking techniques, such as the long take, dramatic framing, and more advanced CGI. I mean, this movie is beautiful. From Dementors raiding the train to Harry flying on the back of a hippogriff. It all just pops out of the screen. This movie also has a pretty insane plot. And with everything going on, it's amazing how they managed to pull it off so well. They also introduced one of my favorite characters in this one, which is Sirius Black, who is played by one of my favorite actors, Gary Oldman. They also introduced a new professor, who's the professor of the dark arts, which... why do they have a new dark arts teacher every year? I mean, they can't keep a single one? Is it like they have a new dark arts teacher every year because of the grade? If so, why do all the other teachers stay the same? Does no one else notice this? This movie has everything. I mean, Dementors, a magic map. They have time travel. I never thought I would enjoy a Harry Potter time travel plot as much as I did. And all these elements come together in one beautiful scene, one of the best in the Harry Potter, with a face-off between Snape, Lupin, Sirius Black, and Harry. It brings in all the elements of foreshadowing from earlier in the film in one amazing event. And the movie is just getting started at that point. With the reveal of the werewolf and going back in time, I mean, the climax just feels so awesome and in the moment. This Harry Potter movie feels more like a Harry Potter film, if that makes sense. Most of these feel like they're a genre piece. This one feels like a cinematic movie. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, however. We'll get to that eventually, but I love this movie nonetheless. I'd give this one the most rewatchable out of 10. I mean, this movie was just so disappointing. They get all the characters wrong, first of all, especially Dumbledore, who acts like a crazy drug addict trying to get some money from a little kid in this one.
Harry, you put your name in a goblet of fire.
But I will not forgive what they did to my boy Ron, turning him into like some whiny baby that's all jealous at Harry one second and then fine with him the next second. This movie makes me so mad I can't even talk. Let me just read what I wrote. The narrative gets going right away. Oh wait, no it doesn't, because we have to sit through this long Quidditch scene that never actually gets played out or has any relevance to the rest of the movie. But after that, the main narrative comes into play, which is who put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire. After that, the rest of the movie is spent totally ignoring this plot and instead focusing what I like to call classic big budget storytelling. Look here, he's fighting a dragon. Look here, he's swimming underwater. But they don't actually give us a reason to care, besides the fact that he could die in these, which just doesn't make any sense. I mean, this school seems willing to just kill off any of their students, which is absolutely crazy. So if he did die, it would just be for a stupid reason. And then they get mad at this later when it actually happens to one of the lovable side characters with 2 lines, aka Robert Pattinson, aka Cedric Diggory. Granted, it wasn't directly their fault that time, but this film isn't all bad. I mean, the dance that happens in it is quite entertaining and comedic, which I feel is definitely the right tone to go for with this kind of teenage drama. Also, Mad Eye, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, is really good, or at least the fake Mad Eye, who is secretly the villain the whole time, and hey, look, the plot got resolved! After that, we get Voldemort returning from the dead and then immediately failing to kill a 14-year-old kid. I mean, if you want to make your villain intimidating, stop making him so weak. I would give this movie a set-heavy comedy piece that's not actually funny out of 10.